Hi friends, Miss Onesi here. Welcome back for week 5 of distance learning. This week we're going to be talking all about making inferences, which I'm really excited about because this is a brand new skill that we started to learn in 4th grade. So it's still pretty new to us, right? But we want to make sure we get extra practice with it before we move on to 5th grade. So that's what we're going to be focusing on this week. So if you're in the right place with me, our packet, it says Lesson 12, Supporting Inferences about Literary Text. And it's going to be starting on page 176. Make sure you have that ready and make sure you have a pencil ready to go. So an inference is just a fancy word that means a reasonable guess, right? It's a guess, but it's not just a random guess. It's a guess based on some important information. So an inference, when we're talking about it, is usually found from clues from the text plus your background knowledge. So stuff that you already know combined with stuff you're reading from the text is how we make an inference or a guess about what the author is trying to tell us. So I want you guys to imagine something. I want you guys to close your eyes. Now I want you to think about you are at home and you're sitting out on your front porch, you're sitting out on your front lawn, and you see a taxi pulling up in front of your neighbor's house. Then your neighbor comes out of the house and is carrying suitcases. So what do you think's going on with the neighbors? What kind of guess, what kind of inference can we make about the neighbors? So when you picture people with suitcases boarding a taxi and think what you know from your own experience. So let's think about what are some clues we have from our text, or what are some clues that Miss Onesi told us. So we know that there are people with suitcases and a taxi. Plus our background knowledge. So we have people, we see people walking out with suitcases and we see they're about to get into a taxi. Our background knowledge, when I see people with a suitcase, I know that they're probably going somewhere, right? You don't just pack a suitcase and get into a car. If you're not going somewhere else, you got to pack your things. So my background knowledge tells me that people with suitcases are going somewhere. So what kind of inference can I make about my neighbors, knowing that people usually have suitcases or going somewhere? I can infer, or I can guess that my neighbors are leaving for some kind of trip, right? They're going somewhere. So an inference, again, is a reasonable guess based on what you already know and what details you see. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at our packet here, page 176, and I want to direct you guys to our learning target up here. So our learning target today says, use story details and examples to explain what the story, says and to support inferences you make. Okay, so let's go ahead and read this read section together. An inference is a reasonable guess you figured out based on what you already know and the details of what you see or read. When you make an inference, be sure you can support it with evidence or details and examples given in the text, right? That's something we practice all year. You never want to give an answer without giving evidence or where in the text you kind of figured that out. Readers make inferences to figure out what a story does not say directly. Evidence from a text can often help you understand something that an author hints at but does not state directly. So let's go ahead and look at this cartoon below. What inferences can you make about the girl? Which details help you figure out her feelings? So when you read a story, you can combine what you know with details in the text to make inferences. Now, why do we make inferences? Inferences will help us understand things about the characters or about the setting or about the events in a story that the author does not explain directly or explicitly. So after studying that cartoon for a while, after studying this girl, she says, I'm so excited to finally see this movie. Everyone says it's so good. And then the second thing, kind of see her getting a little sleepy. And then the third, she's completely passed out, right? So now that we finally looked at that, that cartoon for a while, let's go on to page, our next page, page 177. So page 177, it says, what have you learned about What have you learned about using details to make inferences? Consider what happens in the cartoon. How does the girl eventually feel about the movie? Use what you figure out about the girl to complete the inference chart below. What inferences based on the details in the cartoon and what you already know? Okay, so the first thing I want to do with this chart that's going to help us kind of organize our thinking is what does the cartoon show, right? What directly does the cartoon show? That's our evidence, right? It's what it's showing. So the first thing I see that the cartoon shows is that the girl wants to see the movie that everyone says is good. She looks awake, right? So at first we see that the girl wants to see the movie and she is awake. So what I know, this is already filled in for us, from my experience, it says people often look forward to seeing a new movie, especially if they've heard good things about it. So knowing those two things, knowing what I've seen in the cartoon and knowing my experiences that when someone is seeing a new movie, especially things they've heard good things about it, that they're excited about it. So my inference is that the girl in our story is excited to see this movie. All right, let's think of another piece of evidence. Let's see, what else do we notice about this cartoon? So the next thing in the next frame, I see that the girl is yawning. Kind of maybe looks like she's checking her watch. So I'm gonna write, girl is yawning and checking her watch. So, okay, that's what I see in the text. What do I know about people who yawn and are checking maybe their watch? So some people yawn or check their watch when they want something to be over, right? They are maybe bored. You know, when you get bored in class, you might be like, oh, I don't want to be here, checking your watch, seeing when lunch is. So knowing that that's what I see the girl doing, and that's what I know about my prior knowledge of what it usually means when someone does that, I'm going to infer that the girl in our story doesn't find the movie very interesting, right? She's not very interested in this movie that everybody seems to like. Can you think of a movie like that? I know for me, that's like the Marvel movies. I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for that, but when I watch them, they're just not very interesting to me. And the final thing that I see in that final frame is the girl in our story is asleep. So what do I know? Background knowledge about people who fall asleep in movies like that. People who are bored may fall asleep, right? So what can I infer knowing that my girl in our third frame shows that she's fallen asleep? And if I know that people who are normally bored fall asleep at things, I'm going to infer that the girl thinks the movie is boring, right? She is not interested in this movie that everybody else is interested. So go ahead and pause this if you want to fill out your chart just like mine. So in the next section of our packet, we're going to be reading a mystery, and we're going to be making inferences supported by the details in that mystery, and also our own evidence, right? Stuff we already know. So remember, making these kinds of inferences are going to help us better understand what the author does not say explicitly. Explicitly meaning what the author, what he or she does not write explicitly. Like when we look at that cartoon, we don't look at that girl and say, you know, the author is not directly telling us, oh, this girl doesn't like this movie, this girl is bored of this movie. We have to kind of guess that using our prior knowledge and also what we see in the text. So for our next section, we're going to do that using some text details. All right, so let's get into this mystery. Ooh. Okay, so the first thing I see on our page 178 is the title. It says The Penny Thief by Charlotte Fairchild. Okay, so I see the title. It says The Penny Thief. And then I see this beautiful looking bird down here. So I'm going to make an inference, and I'm going to say, based on the title and kind of what I see, maybe this bird is stealing pennies. Maybe this bird's stealing some kind of coins, or this bird is maybe stealing something named Penny. I don't know. What I want you guys to do is go ahead and read this story independently. Pause the video, read it independently. And when you're finished, go ahead and unpause. I'm going to ask you a couple questions about it. Okay, you're back, which means you finished reading the story. So, first question, I want you guys just to think these out loud in your head. First question, why doesn't the parakeet have a name? Okay, I hope you said that the family can't agree on a name, right? They can't pick one, so that's why the parakeet doesn't have a name. Second question, what does Dad notice about his bowl of coins? Okay, so the dad notices that all of the pennies seem to be missing. And third and final question, what is the story mostly about? So we know that this story is mostly about them trying to figure out where these pennies went, right? Trying to find the missing pennies. All right, so let's go ahead to page 179. Okay, so as you'll see, 179. Our explore question for today is, what details in the mystery help you make inferences about the story events in The Penny Thief? So we're gonna first together complete the inference chart that we see under this think section. And this is gonna help us understand the inferences the main character made, okay? So we actually have this first inference filled out for us. It says, the family wants to find out what is happening. So I need to read closely in the text to find text evidence that supports this inference, okay? So I find the first piece of evidence at the end of paragraph 2. Let me go back to paragraph 2 here. So at the end of paragraph 2, the narrator says, none of us knew where the pennies had gone. Let me underline this for you. It says, none of us knew, oh my goodness. Can't make a straight line. None of us knew where the pennies had gone. Okay, so I'm gonna underline that detail in the text, then I'm gonna write it in that box. So let's go write that together. If my thing will let me go down. There it goes. So let me write that here. It says, and I'm using a direct quote here, right? Because it's text evidence. We can use a direct quote from the text. None of us knew where the pennies had gone. Okay, now I want to think about what I know, what my experiences are when I hear none of us knew where the pennies had gone. So I know that when, there's some kind of mystery going on, that people like to figure out mysteries and so all the puzzling events that are going on, right? Some things that confuse them. So I know when something mysterious happens to me, I'm not happy until I figure out what's going on. Okay, so I'm gonna write, people like to figure out mysteries and puzzling events. So when I put these two, oh, didn't spell that right. Oh, so when I put these two things together, these two pieces of information together, I see that this supports the inference, right? That the family wants to figure out what's happening, because they say none of us knew where the pennies had gone, and what I know is when something's missing, they want to figure it out. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video, see if you can figure out, going back and rereading your text, see if you can figure out a piece of text evidence for this second part right here, for this second part. Okay, using this experience that they already gave you. Some birds are attracted to shiny objects. So see if you can figure out what the text says and my inference. Go ahead and pause the video and play the video when you're finished. So another thing I found in the text was a line that said, in every corner of the cage was a pile of pennies. Oh, don't know why that didn't fall. In every corner of the cage was a pile of pennies. And combining this knowledge that in every corner of the cage there's a pile of pennies with the knowledge that some birds are attracted to shiny objects, then I can infer, I can make a reasonable guess, I can figure out that the bird saw the pennies and picked them up to take back to its cage. Or essentially, the bird stole pennies, right? Because it likes shiny objects, and the bird put the pennies in its cage, okay? So I'm curious to know, as you were reading this, what inferences did you make about the missing pennies? Did you think the bird stole it? Who do you think took the missing pennies? Did you have any inferences different from what we came up with? I'd love to know. You can comment them down below. So the final part of this page of our packet is our writing prompt, and you're going to write your response on page 182. I'm just going to read this out loud to you. It says, explain what inferences you made about the parakeet. Include at least 2 pieces of text evidence to support your answer. Use the space provided on page 182 to write your response. Now remember, to explain your inferences, you want to give story clues in the form of text evidence, right? You want to be giving those text evidence directly from the text, right? Things that happen in the text that infer those guesses that you had, okay? That's going to be all for today. If you have any questions, just like every other week, of course, call, text, or email me. All that information is going to be in the description box below, and I will see you next week. Love you. Bye.